All right, let's think a little bit about the difference between potential energy and kinetic energy in relation to the 6 forms of energy we've talked about so far. So potential energy, if we look at Wikipedia, is defined as energy that's stored in a system. And the key word there is stored. That energy is stored there, which means it's not necessarily visible or obvious to the naked eye. There's not really any reason it would be obvious at all until something triggers the release of that potential energy. The other type of energy is kinetic energy. And as you can see from Wikipedia again, that's the energy that an object possesses due to its motion. So this is the energy associated with motion. Energy that's a little bit more obvious, most of the time, but not always. So let's look now at our 6 forms of energy and try to classify them in each of these 2 categories, either potential or kinetic. So first of all, nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is the energy associated with the forces within the nucleus that are holding the nucleus together. And when that nucleus is split, for example, enormous amounts of energy are released. But that energy has nothing to do with motion. That energy that energy is stored energy that's stored there until something comes along to trigger the release of that energy. So that energy would be classified then as potential energy. The next form of energy is mechanical energy. That's the energy associated with the motion of large objects that are kind of obvious to us and that we see around us. And you can tell already that that's going to be kinetic energy because that has to do with motion. So a moving vehicle or a leaping frog has a certain energy associated with it or with them that you will discover if you get in their way while they're moving. The next form of energy is thermal energy. That's energy associated with heat. Now this one's not so obvious because we don't see heat. But heat is evident when you touch something or go into a hot room or whatever. The reason why things are hot is because the average kinetic energy of their molecules is great. So for example, if you touch a stove, the reason why the stove hurts your finger is because the individual molecules within the stove element or the heating element or whatever are vibrating so quickly, it's a solid so they're not really moving around, they're just vibrating, so quickly that they're damaging the cells in your finger or whatever you touch it with. And that's the same thing, the reason why you feel heat when you move into a hot room. So thermal energy is also energy of motion. Electromagnetic energy, that's energy associated with light, radiation. You can feel this when you go out in the sun. You can feel the electromagnetic energy that is warming your skin as you move out into the sunlight. And this is a little more complicated. But in general, we classify electromagnetic energy as energy of motion, and you can kind of remember that because we know that the speed of light is a given constant, and because of that, we know, since it has a speed, we know that it is moving at a certain velocity, and therefore motion is a key word there again with electromagnetic radiation. Electrical energy has to do with the movement of particles called electrons. So those particles, because of their motion, are able to do work and are able to deliver energy. And so there is kinetic energy associated with that as well. And finally, chemical energy has to do with the energy we've talked about between, or the energy of the bonds between different atoms that form molecules or ionic substances. And those bonds, there's nothing at all obvious about energy being associated with those bonds until something triggers the release of those energy, like a flame or something like that. And then we can sometimes see the effects of the energy then. And usually then the chemical energy is transformed into another type of energy, like thermal energy. So chemical energy is the other energy that is a form of potential energy. So nuclear and chemical energy are the 2 here that are forms of potential energy. The other 4 are forms of kinetic energy.